What's up guys, my name is Ace, and it's a bit of a slow news day as we're waiting for Season 2 tomorrow with Black Ops 6. So today I wanted to discuss some very early leaks regarding the potential return of DMZ in COD 2026. So not the upcoming Call of Duty game this year, but next year. It looks like they're bringing DMZ back. Now, normally I wouldn't be discussing leaks this early on just because so many things can change between now and the release of that game in 2026. In saying that though, I do think this is an interesting general topic here, especially because I did see quite a bit of debate forming when it comes to these leaks. So let's go over them. These are coming from the GhostOfHope. This is somebody who's been leaking in the Call of Duty community for many years now. He tends to be quite a reliable source. I do tend to trust the leaks that come from him, but of course they are leaks. And all leaks should always be taken with a grain of salt. And here's what he has to say about their current plans for DMZ in COD 2026. The first one is it'll have its own maps and a dedicated forked version of Warzone's engine. It will apparently be sharing a map set with Ground War instead of the Battle Royale map. So it appears the Ground War map, instead of being pulled from the main Battle Royale Warzone map, it's actually going to be a separate map that they're using for DMZ. And this also seems to imply that Ground War will be returning, which isn't too surprising with Infinity Ward being in charge of COD 2026. At least that's what's currently rumored. And then finally, the big point here that sparked a lot of debate, and the point I want to talk about a fair amount, is they are currently debating whether or not to make DMZ PvE or PvPvE. And just in case you aren't familiar, PvE means you can't kill other players can't kill you, but you can kill the bots, of course, and the bots can kill you. So think back to Modern Warfare Zombies from last year in Modern Warfare 3, that was a PvE experience, whereas the original DMZ from Modern Warfare 2022, that was a PvPvE experience where you could kill other players, they could kill you, and you also have the AI bots on the map on top of that. And when it came to the original DMZ, from what I remember with that mode, it didn't seem to be particularly popular with the general Call of Duty audience. And that's why I wasn't surprised at all when we found out that it wasn't carrying over with Modern Warfare 3. And also from what I remember, it wasn't supported super well throughout that year, especially later in the year. However, in saying that, with DMZ, it did seem that the people that liked it really liked it. There seemed to be a very dedicated DMZ fan base from Modern Warfare 2022. And I think this is likely why they are currently debating whether they should go PvE or PvPvE or potentially both. Because my guess is they're trying to appeal to a wider audience within the Call of Duty community with this, instead of just that very small but dedicated group of players that love DMZ. And so far with this leak, I've been seeing people on both sides of this. People claiming they won't even touch the mode if it doesn't have the style that they want, either PvPvE or PvE. And for me, I'll admit, I was never a really big fan of DMZ. I played it a little bit when it first came out to unlock the M13B because that was the only way to get it, at least at that point. And then I basically just never touched the mode after that. Whereas on the flip side, I actually played a fair amount of Modern Warfare Zombies last year with Modern Warfare 3. I just found it to be a nice, relaxing place to go and grind out some attachments or complete some daily or weekly challenges really quick. And it was just a nice change of pace from the highly competitive feeling of multiplayer. And this is why I tend to be on the side of wanting at least a PvE version of the game alongside PvPvE. Because when it comes to having a PvE mode where you only have to worry about the bots, you don't have to worry about other players hunting you, I just find that it's a much more relaxing experience and, like I said, a nice break away from the hyper-competitive feeling of multiplayer, especially with the matchmaking system that they use in multiplayer these days. It's nice to have that place to go where you can genuinely just relax and play the game and grind through some attachments, grind some challenges, whereas with PvPvE, it tends to be a lot more stressful. But then again, with an extraction style mode, that's the appeal for many people. That's what makes an extraction shooter so exciting. It has high stakes, where every time you load up into that game, there's a lot of risk attached to that, and it's that risk and not knowing whether or not you're going to be able to extract safely that makes it so exciting. This also adds that extra layer to the gameplay experience where you're always having to think about where other players are, what they're doing, and you have to be really cautious about that. Whereas in PvE, that layer doesn't really exist, and you can kind of just shut off your brain because AI is generally quite predictable. And I think both sides of the equation have very reasonable arguments. They're just looking for a different type of experience, and that's fine. And this is why I think ideally, with DMZ apparently coming back in 2026, I think we should have two separate modes. I think there should be a PvE version of the game, but in saying that, there should absolutely be a PvPvE version of the game as well, because without that, I think you lose a lot of the hardcore dedicated fans. And if they are going to have the two versions of the game, I think, of course, the rewards should be far better, or at least far more common on the PvPvE side of things, since there's higher risk attached to that, and higher risk should yield better reward potential. And speaking of rewards, this was my biggest issue with DMZ back in the day. I felt like it just lacked in a feeling of long-term progression, and a huge part of that was a lack of a meaningful inventory system outside of the match. There was no way to collect a bunch of items in game and have all those items now in a stash. And then with that stash, you have a whole economy system like a lot of other extraction shooters have. That was what I was really hoping for with DMZ when it was first announced, and it never came to the game. And that's really the big reason that I just couldn't get into DMZ. I just didn't see any sort of long-term goal or progression with that. So this is where I just want to share my personal hopes for DMZ, with it apparently coming back in COD 2026. Obviously, I'm just speaking for myself here and kind of sharing a version of the game that I think would actually get me interested in playing it. What I would like to see is an out-of-match loot stash. So every time you extract from the game with a bunch of items, it goes into your loot stash. Obviously, that should be a limited stash. And then I would like the ability to sell extracted items with varying value depending on the rarity of that item. And then the key here is having a total cash stash with leaderboards attached to that, so you can compare how much money you have in DMZ compared to your friends or the community in general at least. And then perhaps even have rewards for reaching cash milestones. So if you collect a total of $1 million, for instance, I'm just throwing random numbers out there. If you reach $1 million in a season, then maybe you get a weapon blueprint or some other cosmetic item, for instance. And they could have different stages of that depending on how much cash you end up with. And speaking of that, I would keep that stash seasonal. So every season it resets, you're back to zero again, but it saves what your progress was throughout the season. So you could always look back on previous seasons and see how well you did and how much cash you accumulated throughout the season. And then as we mentioned earlier, I would like to see an option of PvE as well as PvPvE. However, the highly valuable loot should only be available in PvPvE. So if you're really trying to grind for those leaderboards, it should be basically impossible to keep up if all you play is PvE. And there should be a lot of incentive to go into the higher risk mode for those higher rewards. But if you want to just take it slow and you're not really grinding for leaderboards or anything, PvE should still offer the ability to go in and get some items and extract those and build up some cash over time. For me, that would be the type of balance that would actually get me interested in DMZ. There'd be a long-term goal to work toward every single season. There'd be the option to have that place to go if I just want to escape the competitive mindset while still playing Call of Duty, still working towards something, building up my XP, building up my cash stash a little bit. And then if I do want to lock in and I want to take it more seriously and I really want that opportunity to build up my cash stash really heavily, then I can go into the more competitive and higher risk PvPvE mode. That to me would offer a little bit of something for everybody. I think it would have a bit more wider appeal since there would be a lot of people that would just hop on and play PvE. They would have no interest in PvPvE, even if they knew that they weren't going to be progressing as quickly. They'd still be progressing. They could still enjoy the gameplay experience without having to stress too much. Whereas for the people that are really into PvPvE, generally the really dedicated DMZ fans, then that option is there, and it is the more attractive option if you're super interested in grinding those leaderboards and really making a lot of progress in a shorter period of time. Now, of course, those are just my opinions. Honestly, if they don't offer a PvE option, I don't know if I'd really play the mode all that much. And that's totally fine, by the way. That's just my preferences. That's what I look for in the game. If they do go that route, I'm sure it'll make a lot of people happy, and I'm happy for them. But if they want to attract a lot of players like myself, I do think a PvE mode alongside PvPvE would be quite important. Now, of course, these are just my opinions, and this is where I want to hear from you guys in those comments down below. First off, what are your thoughts on DMZ apparently returning in COD 2026? Are you excited about that? Or maybe not so much? And second, what are your thoughts on the whole PvE versus PvPvE or both options? Do you think they should offer only one of those options? And if so, which one would you prefer? Or do you think both of those should be available? Just let me know down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.